All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for everyone that's joining. I am here with Dr. Julie Hanks. My name is Sean Erger. I am at Stuck on SW on Twitter. I blog about social work on stuckonsocialwork.wordpress.com. We're going to be talking about countertransference and kind of learning from those experiences. So I'm going to let Julie introduce herself.
I'm Dr. Julie Hanks. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I own a practice in Salt Lake City, Utah, Wasatch Family Therapy. And I have been practicing for about 20 years. I also do private practice consulting and writing, blogging, and I love social media. So I met Sean through social media, through Twitter, right?
Correct. A great way
go ahead.
Great way to meet people. Yeah. I was just saying, great way to meet people.
And I was thinking, how did we pick this topic? And I went and looked at your interests, I think, on your blog, right? And then I said, oh, you do psychodynamic, and anyway, we got chatting about countertransference and the work that we do.
Yeah, I think you might have been looking at my either my about page or my work with me page, where I do talk about. I have done a couple of presentations on countertransference and how I had the unique experience of doing one for the National Association of Crisis Directors. I did a webinar for them, which was really cool, talking about countertransference and how in crisis work, kind of being aware of your feelings about what's happening and how that really impacts. So I guess just to try to come up with maybe a working definition of countertransference. So what is that? I know we started talking about it, and I said that I think countertransference is really powerful, and I think your statement back to me was, yes, countertransference is a gold mine. So maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, I have found it to be probably the single most helpful tool, not only for clinical work, but also for hiring therapists to work with me. I really pay attention to how I feel in their presence, because that tells me a lot about how clients will feel in their presence and whether or not they will be at ease. And so it's a gold mine. And I also use countertransference in my supervision work, and also in my I wear a lot of hats in my clinic. So I do HR and I do a lot of other things, and I will share with my team what my countertransference is about certain things, and it just kind of helps get to the core. The gold mine. You said it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and my thinking is, my interest in countertransference is really around the times when we as therapists kind of label people as, oh, that case is impossible, or they're being treatment resistant, those kind of statements. I became really curious about those. And, I started to think about how we really sometimes need to look at ourselves, what we bring to the table as therapists. And that's kind of my main interest. And that's how I started getting into reading about how I kind of got kicked off was I started reading about common factors research, meaning that independent of theory, what is the driving force of therapy? Like, what are the ingredients to change? And one of the things that I really became interested in is not so much the client factors, but they talked a lot about therapist factors. Like, what are the therapist factors that bring change forward? And So, and I think a lot of it has to do with when we're stuck on a case, which is kind of my play on words for my blog, is kind of what can we do differently? And I think that's kind of what we sometimes miss, is kind of what are we doing differently, or what can we do differently when we feel like someone's being treatment resistant, or, in quotes, or the impossible case, or the, those kind of things.
Right.
Those kind of labels.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such an opportunity for us to expand as social workers, as healthcare workers, to do our own work. It's like, oh, okay, it's triggering this for me, or I love using countertransference in my psychotherapy as understanding what it's like to be that client, or to be in a relationship with the client. So I find that it's one or the other. So if I'm feeling stuck, or feeling angry or anxious, or, feeling like treatment's not going anywhere, my countertransference helps me to empathize with them and go, oh, they have felt this way before, and this is probably how other people feel in a relationship with them. And, one or the other is probably more present. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really about kind of, because I think that's the thing too, is that it's a two-way street, and we are entering a relationship with somebody, and again, that's sometimes, talk about countertransference, that's something that's sometimes makes people uncomfortable, that whole idea of, yeah, I'm providing you therapy, but this is, this is a two-way street. I'm not, at least that's how I view it, as I'm not, telling you what to do. I want to kind of co-produce, or I want to do the plan with you. I don't want to do it me talking at you, so.
Right. Jonathan has a really good question here. What personal experience doesn't qualify as countertransference?
That's a good question.
So I guess, are personal experience, or personal, because I define countertransference as how you feel about the client. So that could be information about the client, or it could be information about your own. So will you clarify that?
Why don't I'm gonna open up the seat for Jonathan to join. How about
Come
that?
on in.
Is he able to hop on in?
Let's see.
I'm feeling something in the room.
Shows up.
Okay, here we go. Here.
Hey, can you guys? Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Julie, can you hear me?
Short hair.
Oh
yes,
my God!
And your short hair. Oh it looks great, but I'm not used to it.
I know. It's blocks of love, baby. So,
right on.
No, so my question, by the way, this is a great topic. My question was, if I'm with a client and I'm having some feelings or something's coming up, is that always countertransference, or could it be something else?
Like what? What else would it be?
I mean, if I'm talking with a client and, sort of like the classic, I'm bored, I'm angry, I'm scared, those sorts of things, we oftentimes frame them as countertransference. Like, what is that telling you about the relationship, right? You were alluding to that, Julie. But how do you know when feeling bored, or maybe bored is a bad example because that's always relational, but if I'm feeling tired, like maybe that's not countertransference. Maybe I just got really crappy sleep and I could be talking with anybody and get tired, so that it's not necessarily me bringing something into the relationship that I'm sort of projecting onto them. It's just an experience that I'm having regardless. But maybe it's not. So that's my question to you guys. Is there a
Shoot, I'm losing your audio.
Oh, I'm losing yours too. Okay. Did you lose me, Sean?
For a second, I lost you.
I lost you. Now I lost video on Julie, but that's okay though. So, I think almost it seems like almost what you're asking is, can countertransference be a good thing? Does it necessarily have to be a bad label?
No, actually, no. That's not what I was asking.
No.
Okay.
Can I take a stab at what you're asking?
Yeah, please do.
Is it possible that you can just be experiencing something that has nothing to do with the actual therapy session or nothing to do with the client, but it's something that, you're bringing in, like your example of being tired. It's like, well, okay, you'd be tired whether you were talking to anyone, your child, any client you had. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. No.
Oh,
is that defined? I would say yes, audio. That's countertransference because it's.
Julie, hold on. Like, you're breaking up. Oh.
She's going through a tunnel right now.
And it was so profound.
I know. It was it was like the meaning of life is raw. Okay, could you say that again, please? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. Can I say it again? I'm so So in my definition of countertransference, that would still be countertransference because it would be information for me about me and how that's impacting the relationship in the room. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And so by that definition, really everything is countertransference. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, when you're in the room, that is, and you can learn from that. So if I'm tired with every client and bored, that's an opportunity for me to look at myself and go, oh, well, what do I need to learn from this? What am I bringing in that's impacting the work, which is poor self-care or being overwhelmed or, not going to therapy often enough or whatever that is. So I would still count it as countertransference. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, it's difficult to say, in terms of trying to come up with a operational definition of countertransference and kind of what it means. I think it's really subjective in a lot of ways. And I think it's anything that, I don't want to say, I don't know, is it anything that's kind of unspoken in a way that could be impacting, because you mentioned boredom and sleep and things like that. And it doesn't necessarily need to be kind of, it's anything that you bring to the room. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of stumped.
Yeah,
Jonathan.
Melanie's saying, isn't countertransference a reaction to what the client brings?
Right.
Like my being tired is not a reaction to them. Yeah, I think it just depends on how you're defining it. I tend to define it as what you experience in that room. It may be related to what the client's bringing in. It may be related to your past. And that's, as a clinician, that's our job to be sorting through that and know what to share with the client, what work we need to do. So that would be my take on that.
I mean, it's an interesting thing because I think there's this, in some ways, defining countertransference as being pretty all-encompassing gives it power and says, no, it's important to look at everything, right? It gives you permission to be curious about everything you're experiencing. And at the same time, I also think that you run the risk of it being so global that it ceases to mean anything. Because if I meet you and I'm like, oh my God, Julie's amazing, is that countertransference, or is that just me thinking you're amazing.
It's just truth. It's just truth,
Well,
Jonathan. Come on.
That's what I'm saying.
No. I think you're making a really good point, because if anything's countertransference in the room, then what do you focus on? And in a therapy session, I focus on my response to the client, like what I can tie to the client.
Mm-hmm.
Did we lose? I lost both of you now.
Oh,
and so that I think, okay, that gives us. I think that gives me focus. Like, okay, am I bored listening to that person? Am I attracted to them? Am I repulsed by them, or angry at them, or closed off? I think that's the focus in the session that kind of that matters most.
Yeah, while you guys were talking, I was pulling up my presentation and looking for the two dictionary or textbook definitions that I had in the presentation. So I don't know if that's of interest or not. So let's see here. So right from the dude himself, Freud. Let's see here. Let's see. So Freud's statement about countertransference is: we have begun to consider the quote countertransference which arises in the physician as a result of the patient's influence on his unconscious feelings, and have nearly come to the point of requiring the physician to recognize and overcome this countertransference in himself. We have noticed that every analyst's achievement is limited by what his own complexes and resistances permit. So that's right. Freud.
Well, that's helpful.
Freud dropping science on you there.
Yeah. I mean, it sort of puts a context around it. I mean, you can only be a guy and you can only be a physician. So I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, it really, I mean, that definition really actually narrows countertransference to sort of the unconscious that is tapped into by what's going on with the client. Yeah. A little bit, it sounds like it's a little narrower than what we're talking about. But then again, that was like, 120 years ago?
Yeah, so that was, that was 1910. And then so a couple of the other thoughts that I had in the presentation was one by, and I can't remember first names at this point, Streen, Strean. Countertransference is the same dynamic phenomenon as transference, except it refers to the unconscious wishes, defenses which are always part of perception and treatment of the client. The other one that I'm more interested in is, and just kind of going back to the Freud thing, what really I'm interested in is that ending part of being limited by your own complexes and resistances. That's the part that I really get interested in. But another definition that I heard was one by Hayes that argues the notion of the unconscious slowly evolving to include any emotional reaction by the therapist to a client's words or actions.
So a lot more broad on that one.
So, yeah, a lot more broad on that one. So, but those were the
word reaction. So the word reaction to me really evokes kind of an emotional reaction, as opposed to something that might be more cerebral, and that seems to tap into that idea of an unconscious and things that we're not aware of that might be coming to the surface.
Yeah.
I missed that, and it sounded so profound that I'm really sad I missed it. So if you could repeat that, Jonathan.
Yeah. You'll just have to watch The Blab tomorrow.
Yeah. So the sequel.
No, what I said was what I said was that the word
you're gone again, right at the same spot. I will have to watch
All
this
right.
again.
Yes. Yeah. He's completely frozen now. That kind of stinks. Oh no. Now we all
react
froze
or re-
according to Dora Lee, but I don't know what's going on. Okay.
I
Well,
can hear you,
I
Sean,
think
so we can still blab.
yeah, I can hear you too.
Okay.
So I think it seems like there's the where it really splits is the conscious versus unconscious idea.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like I think that's the thing I think we really get tripped up on, but also how present is it in the moment, and I think that's the thing is like, and I like Jonathan's line of thinking though is trying to kind of reduce it to kind of use that whole idea of reducing it to its simplest terms and what is it and how does it impact us. But so I mean, let's see here. We can. I don't know if anybody else wants to hop on, but probably at this point we can open up more seats and kind of see. Well, we can open up the seat and see if anybody wants to hop on. And but Stacey's going to hop on. All right, cool. Let's see if the good vibes will continue here or not. Loading. All right.
Okay.
So what do you?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can. You've hopped on now, Stacy.
Okay, I've got two cameras going, and I don't know which one I'm looking at and which one you guys are on. So.
Oh, you can. Yeah.
I've got a screen.
Look to the one that's in front of
screen
your
over
microphone.
here and the one in front of me. Yeah, so you guys are over on the other side of me, so I can't see you unless I turn.
Wow, this is
yeah. I've got a
serious business
techie
here.
setup. Oh yeah. I'm a little. Hi, my name's Stacy, and I'm addicted to blab. I actually just wanted to let the folks in the side know that we're asking about that, and you guys, Sean, I know you've been on for a little bit. You just have. I hadn't gotten to actually see you in a blab till yesterday, so that part's cool. But that if you can't see somebody, sometimes it's that somebody needs to refresh. And if you're the one that's hosting, that you may need to make someone else a co-host.
Oh, okay.
Jump out of the blab and back in, and that'll actually keep it going, especially while you're on a recording. There's several little tricks and tips like that that I can help you with, Sean, sometime if you want to. We can chat. And I know some of the techie folks over here. If you ever need help when you're in a blab, and if you type in the chat box, if you type in @help, and I think maybe @blab, they will come in the room and help you with it. So I'm just so excited to see my social work buddies all in blab finally.
Yeah.
I've been over here by myself, you guys. I've been the lone social worker in the whole blabosphere. It's been lonely.
No longer.
It's been lonely, no longer. You guys come. As a matter of fact, here in about 5 minutes, there's going to be one. It's called Evict the Bullies in Your Head by Vicki Fitch. She is a business coach and entrepreneur in California, and she is amazing. She's actually writing a book about evicting bullies, and she has a gentleman coming on tonight to interview that has an amazing story. And I know you guys, that we appreciate his story from a different perspective than maybe the rest of the audience. But I think that's actually kind of cool is to see these other communities coming together and us coming into a community where we can give what we have as social workers in this community. So, there's my friend Robin. Hey, Robin.
So what say you, Stacy, about countertransference? What are your thoughts? Any?
Well, not much today. Mostly, I've been at a funeral all day, so I'm a little bit out of sorts in my own brain. Kind of, I'm probably not the best person to ask that question of right now.
Okay.
I wanted to kind of mostly jump. Really wanted to jump in and give a little bit of tech help back to you guys, because one of my passions is actually probably one you and I share, I think, Sean, is teach like when I teach my students, I teach in an MSW program. It's teaching them how to use tech to make their jobs easier, work smarter, not harder, and just incorporating tech in social work. And because many of us aren't techies. I'm a techie from way back. I feel like I'm an anomaly frequently in our career, but I'm always like I said, I've been on Blab for 150 days, and I'm glad you guys finally came to help me out here.
Okay.
So
right.
I'll jump out of the seat. I just wanted to say hello. I wanted to say thanks for having this and getting it going, because it's a great platform, and I think it's a great place that we can connect.
Yeah, it's a great place
and make even more of a connection, not just with our own community and in our own profession, but with other communities that are out there that, they don't know necessarily what, the drill. They don't know what we do for a living.
Yes.
And mental health as well. That's when yesterday, the fact that they blew up Twitter yesterday, just know on Blab that they're still definitely in beta. And there are some glitchy things, but then there's also people out there to help. So
great.
If you ever,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Melanie's comment on the side. If somebody could, well, I could probably do that. Post the link to the.
I do have Google Plus work too. So.
Yeah, the Google Plus social work and technology group is awesome.
If you want to just maybe you could tag me on a DM on Twitter with the information, or
sure.
I haven't been on Google as much now that I've been in Blab. I'm kind of back over to Twitter and Blab, and then I have a Facebook group for anybody who's in the Midwest area. It's called Heartland Social Work Hub, HEARTLAND, Social Work HUB, like a hub of a wheel, and it's a great place to connect. There's students in there.
There it is.
People out in the field and everything. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Melanie.
All
my God, I love it. I'm seeing all these names I know. I'm going to jump back to the side, and I'm getting ready to jump back into this other Blab, so I'll see you guys laters.
Yes, thank you.
Join me over there.
Thanks for stopping by.
I'll put... good to meet you, Julie.
Nice
I'll put the link to Vicky's Blab in the side, unless Robin can find it for me, since I know she's listening.
Stacy,
if you can find Vicky's one, then these guys can come over and see the awesomeness that we know as Vicky Fitch. So, cool. Good to meet you guys.
Great to meet
waving
you.
at the wrong camera.
All right, get that straightened out. All right, if anybody else wants to hop on, but we got a question from Robin, or Robin, maybe you want to hop on. So what do patients of therapists need to know about countertransference? It's a good question. What do patients of therapists need to know about countertransference? Julie, any thoughts?
I'm just scrolling back through the years and thinking how, have I actually done any kind of psychoeducation with clients about it? And probably if I talk about it, I just say how I'm feeling right now. I don't even use the word countertransference, and that's a tool, a window into their experience, their subconscious. So I would just say, I wouldn't use the word countertransference unless they were a therapist, because
I don't think
it's that helpful.
I just went and looked it up, but the therapists have feelings too is what jumped out at me, because I was at therapy today, and I put it on the side. I don't know if you guys saw it. I was just texting my therapist, and she was on the phone with my husband, who called her separately. She sees us both. And so it was just one of those weird little things, and we've been seeing her for a long time, and we both adore her. But it's for me, it's very weird, because I have still that feeling that, she is this authority figure, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but she is someone that I'm going to for advice and stuff like that. But you get so connected with them, because that's what she's trying to do with me in therapy. And it's a really weird thing. And I don't know what her feelings are about that stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah, and we spend some time in graduate school. It's interesting talking about, we don't spend a lot of time, I don't think, talking about this notion of countertransference. But what we do end up talking a lot about is self-disclosure. And if we have our stuff going on as therapists, like when and how do we talk about it? If we have our own stuff with mood problems or anxiety or alcohol, whatever struggles we're going through, is there a time that we self-disclose, or should we never self-disclose? Should we just, completely block that off? And I would imagine there's a lot of differing opinions about that. Me, it depends on the context, how much I need to say, you know what, I'm just really having a crappy day. I don't,
Sean, I can tell you that with my therapist, I'm going to say her name, Susan. She's not on Blab, but I'm not saying anything else. But Susan, we have been seeing her for a long time. We started with our son with her when he was 13. He's now 21. My son does not see her any longer, but my husband and I do both individually. It's something that was different for her. She says, normally you guys don't do that, see two, like a couple individually like that, but it's working for all of us. And so we've been doing it. But I kind of like when she discloses a little bit of her own stuff to me sometimes, because it makes me be able to connect with her a little bit better. I don't know if she does that with my husband or not, because she doesn't talk about what her and my husband do in their sessions, nor does she talk about what I do in my sessions to my husband. She's very good about that. But it does make me, she's a mom also. She's married also. So sometimes she can relate, when I'm talking about my stuff, she can relay something of her personal life back to me. And it allows me to connect with her a little bit better, that I go, oh, she really does understand what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't want to know all of her stuff. I really don't. I got enough problems of my own. I don't want to know all of her stuff. I'm not a therapist. I'm not there to help her with her stuff, right. But it does help a little, to right. know just those, and she seems pretty good about when she should throw out those nuggets. And I've gotten used to her too. When I go into her office, what we found is that I really do a scan of everything in the office. I can tell her if anything has changed in the office since my last visit. I can tell by the look on her face what kind of days she's kind of having and stuff. And that's one of my own defenses, that I have to do that. But it's really been interesting for her to kind of see what I have to say about how she seems to be feeling that day.
Right. Yeah.
But it's only because of my work with her that I do that.
Right. So Nathan hopped on.
Yeah, and I'm going to hop up. I just wanted to say those things because I know I talk a lot, and I'm sorry. But
no, that's okay. That was a great contribution and a great question.
Okay. Great.
So, thank you.
Really great talk. Thank you guys so much. I'm still listening.
Okay.
Thanks, Robin.
Howdy, Nathan.
Hey, how are you?
Great. How are you? What brings you to us to see?
It was interesting. It was interesting because I was looking at the countertransference and I was wondering what that was. And like Robin here, I wound up looking it up just to be sure. And I've had a couple of things with therapists in the past, and one was the most recent one that I'd seen a few years ago. And I don't know if it was countertransference, but every now and then he would talk about certain things that happened, like if he wound up being late or something. And he was an avid cyclist, and he was telling me about winding up in a crash, and that he was a bit sore in the shoulder. I mean, it wasn't a problem in any way. I actually liked that he would tell me this stuff, that he felt comfortable enough to share it. The other situation that happened, I don't know if you would call it countertransference, but it was a really weird situation for me because I was going to this counselor who later became my client. he was, one of the things that he was doing in his business is astrology charts. And way back in the day, he was terrified of technology, didn't want to touch it, but he knew that I was really good at it. And he said to me one day, I could really use your help, and gave me all the programs I needed. So I wound up doing charts for him, and it created a real discomfort for me for quite a while. And eventually I got over it, but for a period of time, it was challenging. And because I didn't really know where I was in terms of how we were. And eventually, it took me some time, but I got past it, and eventually he became a really good friend. He's still a teacher to me. Every now and then I talk to him about stuff, but the relationship has changed dramatically since then. And we're now good friends, but at the time it was really challenging. And I don't know if this is what you would call countertransference or an issue with boundaries.
Well, I think, and I think that's something that can kind of bring about, before you came on, we were talking about kind of how do we define it. And I didn't quite settle that either, but because I think it's complicated, but I think that's the thing. And I think that's at least that's what I wanted to bring to the table about this. But the issue you bring up is that whole notion of dual relationships. Total therapist answer. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's actually happened again recently, but it's to do with something that I'm doing, and the people who are helping me have also become major fans of something that I'm doing.
Right.
But in this particular case, both of us were upfront about the entire thing right up from the very beginning. So for me, there's no issue of any kind.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would call it countertransference. I don't know what I would call it. But all I know is that, yeah.
Yeah, it brings up that idea of kind of a dual relationship almost, the working the therapy relationship, and then that becoming a working relationship, which can sometimes, complicate things.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah. So, but it also can kind of bring in understanding, like, oh, okay, you do this, and I see you as an expert too in something, which is interesting. So,
well,
also kind
in
of
this one particular case, I'd signed up for a free coaching session with this one outfit, and what happened is the coach and myself had an unbelievable amount of rapport. There were so many things in common. It was it very quickly went from like a relationship in one way to something entirely different, because I don't even know how to explain what happened. All I know is that that's what happened.
Yeah. And Melanie I've read this article before, Melanie, that you posted on the side here. The therapist, I forget what the actual title is, but I see the ending of it. Falling in love in therapy. Oh, this must be a different one. This is fairly recent. No, that was last year. Whoops, never mind. I don't know what year I'm in.
When something like that happens, is it the therapist who falls in love with the patient, or the patient who falls in love with the therapist, or both?
Well, this is This is a great example of transference and countertransference. So transference is what the client feels, or their response to the therapist, and the therapist, their experience is called the countertransference.
Got it.
And so, yeah, so that's, and falling in love in therapy, having those feelings as a therapist, we interpret that differently than falling in love somewhere in the real world.
Of course.
That's giving information about the client and, their subconscious, their unmet needs, so yeah, that's, and brings up a lot of, even talking about it right now, I feel anxious because I've had experiences where like a client tells you they have these feelings, and it's like, it can kind of throw you off. So But
What do you do?
it leads to really good therapy.
Does it? How so?
Oh yeah, because then you process that and get to what it's, usually it's about unmet emotional needs, and that this is, it feels really good for somebody to be present and validating. And, often the clients where this has been an issue, they haven't had that. And they feel that they feel that in the therapy session because it's a contained relationship. It's safe to feel it, and those emotions come up. So, and as long as you have boundaries and realize that it's not really love, and nothing's going to happen because you have good boundaries.
Right.
It's not like Stockholm syndrome or something like that. It's something else, right?
Well, it's transference and countertransference. It's what the client's feeling as a response to you, and what you're feeling as a response to them.
Got it. Okay.
Welcome, Melanie.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Hi, Melanie.
Hi. So I think it would be nice to hear some examples, and I'll offer up one of my own. I was working with a client, and it was in a home visiting kind of situation. So I was working with a family, and the father in this family had a problem with alcohol, and he was doing his best to hold it together, but had some some behaviors that were pretty dysfunctional and bordered on abusive. And I had just been processing some stuff with my own dad about his alcohol use when I was growing up, and had finally gotten to the place where I was really working on forgiveness and accepting him where he was and how he was, and coming to terms with our relationship. And I found myself with this particular client kind of minimizing his behaviors and being really generous and really doing he's doing the best that he knows how kind of thing, which is where I was coming to with my own father. And I finally caught what I was doing, that there's some of this processing my stuff with my dad that was going on with this client. And I realized that I was giving this person some special favor and treatment related to the time that I spent in my case management and other things. And so I went and checked in with my supervisor and said, I noticed this is coming up, and I'm going to have to watch myself around this. And it's not necessarily a terrible thing, because I'm being mindful and catching it and realizing what's going on. But I need somebody to help me stay in check in terms of working with this person and not letting my stuff get in the way of the therapeutic relationship.
That is a great example.
Excellent example.
Yeah. The one that I always use is that I was when I was first doing my training, there was a guy that was bringing his kids in for therapy, and one time the CPS got called, Child Protective Services got called on this gentleman because he was what was it? He was driving, letting the 7-year-old drive a large adult 4-wheeler without a helmet, and there was some mention of some guns being unlocked and all this stuff. So me being the good therapist that I thought I was, really was trying to convince this guy that this is awful. This is horrible. You can't do that. In the therapy, instead of talking about his kids' needs, I ended up arguing with this guy about his values about guns and 4-wheelers. And I brought this to supervision. I said, we just keep going around in circles about this. And my supervisor was like, really, that's not your job. But I just couldn't get past it. I wanted so badly to convince this guy that how he was parenting his children was wrong. And I was just so stuck there that I couldn't get past it. And finally my supervisor was like, you're not going to win this. This isn't winning. You should be entering a relationship with this dad about his children, not about his values around guns and trying to convince him that he's right. So
Sean, can I ask you something about that?
Yeah.
Just like, was any of that something that you brought to were you able to pinpoint what that was about for you? Like why you were engaging in that?
And again, I think that, I think it was, for me, it was about, I was treating his children for ADHD, and, and it was like, the thing that I got stuck on was, pardon me, was, I think I wanted to make sure that the kids were safe, and that became first and foremost. And you know what, looking back at it, they probably were, ultimately. But I think it was just my need really to try to rescue the situation, I think, and to try to make things better. And I think sometimes in doing that, we sometimes get caught in this loop,
Yeah. There are a couple of things that come up listening to you, if you don't mind me.
No, go ahead.
Well, two things. One is that when something like that comes up, it triggers your stuff, as you were saying. And for me personally, when stuff comes up that triggers me, I've had to train myself not to engage in a knee-jerk reaction, that I literally have to force myself to step back. Because listening to you speak, I thought, I wonder what would have happened if you'd been able to get in rapport with the guy and then see about changing the behavior. But from my own experience, I've made the knee-jerk mistake so many times that I'm at the point now that when somebody throws something at me, if I have the presence of mind at the time that it happens, then I can force myself to step back and not engage and just wait until the feelings, the reaction runs through my body and my mind and my body. And then once it passes, then I can respond. But if I jump, then I have a knee-jerk response and I wind up defeating my own purpose.
Yeah. And I think that's where the, we don't always, I think we tell our clients to do that, but we don't always do that.
How true it is, mate. How true it is. Yeah, of course.
We preach, to try to slow down and collect your thoughts and, think before you speak and kind of, find your center. And sometimes it's difficult for us to find that place and that moment. And I think that's really what I'm kind of thinking about. That's my main interest is kind of, when do the feelings become a problem? And I think that's where we get stuck with this definition of countertransference. Doesn't necessarily need to be a problem, or when does it interfere with the relationship? Sorry.
Can I speak to that, Sean? I think for me, I watch the intensity. Whether it's a positive emotion, like, I'm so looking forward to seeing this particular client, or whether it's like, I can't stand this, or whatever. It is kind of high, usually the trigger for me to go, okay, what's going on here? I remember working with, you can't hear me?
Well, now I can hear you.
See.
You go in and out, your internet connection's causing grief.
Okay. I'll repeat my audio dropped out. The most important moment. So what I have learned is really helpful to notice is the intensity of my countertransference, whether it's positive or negative. But if it kind of goes uncharacteristically intense, either positive or negative, I'm really looking forward to seeing this client, or I'm thinking about, how does my hair look, or it's like, well, that's interesting. Or I'm thinking about them a lot outside of therapy. Or I remember I was working with a couple, and the husband was really emotionally shut down and was very in his head and had a hard time connecting those, and it was so frustrating for me. And I just was like, oh, I can't stand. I mean, inside I didn't tell him this, but like, oh, this is so frustrating. And then as I consulted with colleagues, I realized, oh, okay, this is some of my stuff coming up. And I was able to process that. And it also helped me understand how his dad was with him. Like his relationships were like that too. And so anyway, it really helped me to empathize with myself. Like, oh, of course, this, shut down male really is hard for you, because that's how you experience your father in, my dad in my early years. And then he experienced his dad that way too. And so it gave me a place to empathize and connect with him and kind of be more empathetic and actually get past that. He's doing great.
I had a similar kind of interesting situation that just kind of popped into my head. I was talking to this woman, and she, I guess her diagnosis, and it was in an inpatient setting. And she said to me, "You sound just like my mother." And I was like, but then we kind of explore, and I joked with her. I said, "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" And she had said to me, "Actually, you know what? It's not too bad." And I go, "Oh, okay." Because usually when somebody's saying they sound like their mother, but
you're like, phew.
Yeah. But it was interesting
That's
that
awesome.
I asked that question, and I started to think about. Bye, Jonathan. Saying farewell. Yeah. But I think what that brings up a good point is to kind of think about, okay, you can't assume that what that person is feeling is kind of what's happening. I think again that kind of check yourself idea is good. Melanie asked a good question. So what do you suggest I should tell MSW students with no practice experience about countertransference? That's a good question too. What do you think, Julie? You want to field?
Yeah. What I teach my team about it is just that it's important, and it's part of being a responsible and helpful social worker or therapist, is being able to reflect on that in the session and know what's your stuff, what's theirs, when to self-disclose, and to talk in supervision about it a lot. What is coming up for you? One of my therapists under supervision, I just was doing some consulting, and her countertransference toward this father of a teenage boy that she was working with really helped her. We assessed it, and it really helped her realize, oh my gosh, she's buying into kind of this taking sides in the family, and she wasn't really able to empathize or connect with this dad, which is key to helping this kid. So that it is, I think, the most valuable information, or some of the most valuable information that you'll be able to glean from the sessions.
Yeah.
And when we're doing case consultation, that we always say, what's your countertransference in this case? Because that's usually part of why people get stuck, is that's not being dealt with.
That's great to actually work that into kind of your rounds, so to speak, is to include that and an open, honest conversation about it. I think, Melanie, I'll drop you in here too. But I mean, in terms of what I just wanted to say that just it exists, just to let people know that it exists. It's a thing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's something that's kind of left to the field supervisors to address, or if there's even a place, because it wasn't talked about in any of my graduate education. I don't think I really kind of got it towards the end of my field, and where I started to get that kind of stuff. But it wasn't really addressed. Sorry, go ahead.
We teach some clinical practice courses, and one of the things that I teach is narrative therapy, which uses more self-disclosure in a real therapeutic way, but it's theoretically bound. And so for my concrete students, I have sometimes trouble with them differentiating between why it's okay to use a certain kind of self-disclosure with narrative therapy that you wouldn't use necessarily if you're doing CBT, that the theoretical support for using the self-disclosure in a specific way makes a difference. And so for the students who are just learning the differences and trying to figure out the theory piece of that can be really challenging.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because it really does depend on kind of how the theory that you're teaching, kind of how much room is there to talk about your feelings. That's a great point, and to talk about countertransference and things like that. Oh, we lost Julie. Hopefully she'll come back in a little bit. But yeah, so I think that's great, though, that it's kind of talked about, though, too. So, but yeah, I think that
this reminds me to link that piece to the conversation about countertransference issues too. So, thanks. It's a good conversation.
Yes. Yeah, it was great. Okay. All right. I'll wait for Julie to hop back on. But yeah, that was a great question, and probably a great way to end. We've been on for about an hour recording. So
am I back?
A good. You're back.
Okay.
And you're back. So what I was just saying was that was just a great kind of concluding question, I would say, at least for the recording piece. So it was great talking with you all about this. This was fun.
Yeah, it was so fun. My very first blab. Thanks, Sean. This is. I think I'm going to. I think I'm going to like it here.
Yeah, it's fun. It becomes a little addicting. So. But yeah, it was great.
And a good topic, Melanie, too.
Yeah, great topic. Thanks for collaborating with me on it, and we'll stop the recording part and